was Red Sox home opener. And we couldn't get out of the Fenway area near our campus. And we were an hour late because of our own home game because of the gridlock of people in the cars.
Yep.
So eventually we got over to the field, and Middlebury was already there, and their head coach, Rob Pfeiffer, had this big guy, high and tight haircut, barking out instructions. We're a bunch of ragtag hippies. Picture me with dark hair down to here.
I love
started
it.
in the middle band, okay? And
70
then the other
swag.
guy, 70 swag, yeah, not anymore. And then Ronnie and Jemmy on the team. Ronnie had this long hair too and had a beard. He shaved half his beard off before the game to pump us up. And I'm not sure what that was about. Yeah, shaved half his beard.
Oh, wow. That's quite the look.
It's quite the look.
And liftoff at dawn. The new era of American space exploration.
Shall we head to my favorite planet in the galaxy? The planet of good vibes. The planet of good vibes.
The planet of good vibes. The planet of good vibes.
It's time! All right.
I love humanity. I think it's great.
It's all good, man. I think the word you're searching for is Space Ranger.
The Hamm Planet Podcast.
Stick around.
We are blasting off into the galaxy of good vibes. In approximately 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Top of the morning, folks. Good afternoon and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Hamm Planet Podcast. I'm your host, Peter Hamm. And if you're new to the show tonight, love to see it. You are absolutely in for a treat. I want to say thank you guys for listening, watching, viewing, and subscribing. And if you're on Spotify, we greatly appreciate a good old 5-star review. The goal is to get to 50 reviews. And if you're watching from YouTube, please make sure to hit that subscribe and like button because it helps the show tremendously. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight's guest is very near and dear to my heart. Now, students across the world can always reflect back to maybe 1, 2 teachers, really just had a profound impact, teachers that they really cherish. And I am very happy to say that tonight's guest is one of those teachers for me. His wisdom and his wittiness stand in a class of its own, and he is truly one of a kind in so many ways. Tonight's guest is a Culver Academy's legend, teaching and coaching at my alma mater, the Culver Military Academy, for nearly 2 decades. Over those 2 decades, he inspired thousands of students and thousands of athletes to become the best that they can be, and he still continues to do so to this day. Our guest is in the history books as one of the top 20 New England lacrosse players of all time, and he's a proud member of the Boston Lacrosse Hall of Fame. His teachings reach far beyond just lacrosse, though, and over the years, he has educated, inspired, and mentored coaches and athletes across all realms of sports. Of all, ladies and gents, our guest is a best-selling author of his newest book, Coaching Zone, Next Level Leadership in Sports. This book is loaded with concepts, exercises, self-evaluation tools, and stories, combined with insights from over 50 coaches to help you expand your coaching wisdom and expertise. Y'all, not the biggest reader, but I must admit, this is a fantastic book that I could not recommend enough. Without a doubt, a must-read. Ladies and gents, I'm extremely happy to have him on the show tonight. Let's give it up for the one and only Dr. John Yeager. Dr. Yeager, how you feeling?
I'm feeling great after that wonderful introduction, Pete. It brings me back to the time when you were back at Culver and we were, in class and on the athletic field and brought back some wonderful memories.
Yes, I remember in your class, Dr. Yeager, you as a teacher were always very animated. You're always very charismatic. You had a good way of combining the two of those, and that was one of the many things that I always liked about you. But Dr. Yeager, it's fantastic to have you here tonight, and I know all of the Culver family out there who's listening will definitely be excited for this one. So I've got so many questions that I want to ask you, Dr. Yeager, but to get us started, I'd like to rewind the clocks to young John Yeager. And I would like to learn about, Dr. Yeager, where did your passion for coaching, where did your passion for helping athletes become their best, helping coaches become their best, where did it really come from?
Well, I have, one story that I reflect upon a lot in my life happened when I was 11 years old. Okay, I was this little scrawny kid in Framingham, Massachusetts, around 20 miles west of Boston. And I was a runner. I wasn't very good at it, but I liked to run. And I asked my dad if I could be in the July 4th road race. It was a 3-miler. I'd never run that far in my life at one time. My dad said, sure. So he registered me, brought me down to the starting line, which was actually right where the parade was going to start afterwards, the July 4th parade. So he got me registered, and I got out there, and I realized I was the youngest kid by around 7 or 8 years. I was the only kid there. Everybody else was like 18, 19 into adulthood. And my body just froze. And I just, the stress level went up, and I didn't know what to do. I wanted to run, I wanted to flee. So I looked over at my dad, and he just gave me this incredible look of a smile, like, your call, John. What do you want to do? He didn't say a word. He was just there for me right there at that moment. And so I sucked it up, stayed on the line. The gun went off, finished dead last. I mean, the parade almost caught up to me. Yeah. I mean, it was I could hear the fire engines blaring right behind me there too. But that moment really helped to crystallize for me some of his mentoring of me, of really looking at of a notion of what I call, and I'll talk about it later probably, get this notion of psychological capital, of looking at 4 really important characteristics. One is hope, having pathways and agency to get there, and confidence and optimism and resilience. And I think through my life since then, I've really used that as an athlete, and eventually as a coach, and now today as a mentor of coaches, Pete.
So, Dr. Yeager, just curious, your parents, you mentioned your dad simply just gave you a head nod, and that was your sign that, hey, balls in your court, son. I'm curious about your parents, Dr. Yeager. What were your parents like? What did they do? And could you tell me a little bit about them?
Sure. Well, my dad is still kicking. He's 95 years old almost, and really flourishing. Lost my mom when she was 65, back in the early 90s. But the thing is that with them, extremely loving and caring, almost to the point of caring, kind of keeping the apron string too much and not letting me do the things, just
right.
Do the extracurricular parents. Stuff, and helicopter parents, for social stuff in high school and like that. But I forgave them for that, and I love them dearly for the love and care that they gave me and my sister, and my father continues to do. And I think that was critically important. They listened to me, they took me seriously, they made me feel like I was genuinely needed. And I think that really rubbed off in my interactions with other people. And that was really important for them, and is how we treated each other and how we treated each other, other people. And that probably stimulated one of the reasons I got into education in the first place. Pete, it was just, they were just, just wonderful people. And I think, if I may, that really kind of pushed me to a point where I ran into a coach that I had. I was my soccer coach in high school. and George Wheeler, and I just looked up to him so much. And I remember playing in a game, soccer game. I was a goalie in soccer as well as lacrosse, and there was we were playing the top team in the state, and it was 0-0 with like 5 minutes left, and the other team had a clearing pass, and it hit. I saw it, went into the sun. I missed it, went over my head. We lose the game 1-0. So I was distraught at the end of the game. And I went into his coaching office after the game, I'm so sorry. And he looked at me, he goes, come on, you just made some unbelievable saves. We played the best team in the state to a tie for almost all that time. That was a great experience there. And that was George Wheeler. And he is, with my parents and him, is probably one of the reasons I went into coaching, and I went into teaching also because of him. Just an amazing guy.
Absolutely. So were your parents by chance a coach or a teacher growing up?
No, they weren't. My dad worked for the original AT&T.
No way.
When he would climb
great-grandfather.
telephone poles.
My great-grandfather did that as well.
Really?
Climb telephone poles as well. Yes, sir.
He would climb poles, and in the basement of our house, Pete, he had these spikes, and these spikes that he would actually put around his boots and tie up on his legs. And when he climbed the pole, they didn't have the buckets then.
Nope.
So he would do that. Isn't that cool?
That is so cool, and that is quite the coincidence, because similar to this question, I asked my grandfather about his father, and he worked for the old AT&T, climbed phone poles, and had the spikes as well. So a lot of similarity there. Learned that's quite the difficult job, and it's definitely changed a lot nowadays.
Yeah, he was a repairman. When he'd get up there and he would work on the wires, and he had a great story once where his safety line, he kind of it didn't fall, but he ended up, it got too loose and he fell, and he had to grab the pole, and he ended up getting all the splinters into his arms as he kind of saved himself as he went down there. But extremely proud of Peter, extremely proud of the work he did. And he did that for 40 years, and eventually he moved up. I mean, didn't climb poles for that long, but moved eventually into management and actually managed other repairmen there too. Yeah.
I'm sure once you get up in the 50s and 60s, 70s, it's probably good to not be climbing those phone poles.
No, not at all. Yeah.
Awesome, Dr. Yeager. So, Dr. Yeager, what I'd like to go ahead and dive into is if you could just tell us a little bit about why you wrote The Coaching Zone. And I'm happy to have the hard copy here, ladies and gents. Hopefully you'll be getting yours soon if you're listening. Dr. Yeager, could you give us an overview of why you decided to write the book?
Well, it stems back from that 11-year-old event, and also a lot of other events I've had in my exposure to really good coaches and also not so good coaches. Also having that opportunity to coach myself and to mentor coaches. One of the things that I think of, it's another story that comes to me that really, I look back upon, that really prompted me to eventually look at this book, was when I was in college and I was playing lacrosse for Boston State College. They're now UMass Boston. And I was a goalie in lacrosse also. And some people call goalies in lacrosse courageous. Other people call them stupid for getting hit with the ball. I'm not sure what category I was in, depends on the day. So anyways, we were playing Bowdoin College in our first game of the season, and our field was 3 miles away from our campus. And so I'd get a ride there, and I get a ride with Danny Hayes. And Danny Hayes had this old 1971 Chevy Impala with light blue wings on the back of it, sweet ride. And we would go over there on Storrow Drive along the Charles River every day. And our field was Smith Field. It was a Brighton town field made up with 3 blades of grass, a bunch of broken glass from the neighborhood bar, and a lot of dirt, separated by a chain link fence to the pristine fields of Harvard and Harvard Stadium. So it looked like, if you take the old Super 8 movies, it looked like I was playing at Harvard with a stadium in the background, but no, it wasn't there, And so I got there, and I was really excited for how I was playing, especially how I had played the previous summer. And then I, was excited for the team. And I went out there and I played absolutely awful. I was terrible. I basically sucked. It was awful. And it was almost to the point where I wish the coach could have taken me out of the game, but my goalies weren't ready for prime time at all. So I stuck there. And athletes know that, and coaches know that when in situations, this is the way it is. You got to stay with it.
Yep.
Make lemonade out of it. Did not work there that day. So after the game, got back to my dorm, and of course, that lacrosse at that time was really my identity. It was what I was all about, and therefore my identity was being crushed by this poor performance. Even though that narrative, I really wasn't totally true, I was believing it. And so, of course, I couldn't go to the class the next day because I was grieving, because of my identity. But there was potential redemption 2 days later because we were playing Middlebury at home at Smith Field again, Middlebury College, a really good team also. So, we started getting, we got on the road to get over there in Danny Hayes's car. And what happened is it was Red Sox home opener, and we couldn't get out of the Fenway area near our campus. And we were an hour late because of our own home game, because of the gridlock of people in the cars. Yep. So eventually we got over to the field, and Middlebury was already there, and their head coach, Rob Pfeiffer, had this big guy, high and tight haircut, barking out instructions. We're a bunch of ragtag hippies. Picture me with dark hair down to here.
I love
right
it.
in the middle bend. Okay.
And then other swag.
70s swag. Yeah. Not anymore. And then Ronnie and Jemmy on the team. Ronnie had this long hair too, and had a beard. He shaved half his beard off before the game to pump us up. And I'm not sure what that was about. Yeah. Shaved half his beard.
Oh, wow. That's quite the look.
It's quite the look. Anyways, that comes back in the story in a couple minutes, because I got out there and I got in the goal, and I'm really nervous because I want to make the first stop, first save. First shot goes in. It's a really good shot over my right shoulder. But back in the back of my mind goes, and there's a term called the drunken monkey. And the monkey mind is like, my mind's going around. I am an imposter. I'm not good. Just racing, saying, okay, slow down, take a deep breath, slow things down here. Well, the second shot goes through my legs, 5-hole. And I'm thinking, oh no. Okay. So slow down. Both good shots, but still I hadn't made a save. Then one of the Middlebury players was up at the top of the box, took a real hard shot, a real screamer. Boom, goes off the top of my helmet. Almost goes to half field, the deflection. Looks cool, doesn't hurt because I have a helmet on, but I'm in the zone. Puts me right into the zone. Okay, and Pete, you know what that's like.
Absolutely.
And get there as much as we'd like to get. And the ball became like a beach ball. And for the next 30 shots, I was right on it and stopped them all. And we end up winning the game 6-2. But I think I'm one of the few people that remember the score of the game, because what happened in the second period profoundly influenced my life. The coach of the other team called the timeout. So he barked out, "Middlebury, timeout." And the officials blew their whistle, and Middlebury dutifully ran over to their bench, and Boston State players to their bench. And if you remember Ronnie, he runs to their bench. There is something wrong
with a half beard.
Half beard. He goes through their huddle. "What are you doing, Ronnie?" We got Boston accent. "What are you doing?" He goes through, jumps on the back of the coach of the other team. And the Middlebury players don't know what to do. He gets off the back of the coach. The coach turns around. Ronnie takes off his helmet. He's still got half a beard. They look up at each other. they smile, they tear up, and they embrace. And I'm going, what's going on here? The backstory. When Ronnie heard the voice, the actual inflection and intonation of Coach Pfeiffer's voice, the last time he had heard that specific voice was in the jungles of Vietnam, because Pfeiffer was his platoon commander. And then they were there in the jungle together.
Wow.
And that, everything stopped. It was the time stood still there. Longest time out ever. When we started hearing about that story there, whoa. To this day, I'm still friends with a couple guys on Middlebury because of the connections that we made that day. You know,
Absolutely.
that's really powerfully important. So with that, and as I began to see and asked and, worked with coaches and over time and just decided finally to put together and work on a project that really, really addressed some of the things that matter most in coaching. And I think a lot of it's out there, and I just thought I'd do it with a kind of a different angle of vision in the direction that I came. And what I saw over time that there are so many different skills that in so many different ways that we associate sports with business and how you can use that in being well outside, of the sporting arena. But also I kind of bring in what we call more of a boardroom to the locker room perspective, Pete. It's where there's actually some skills that I've in positive psychology, skills that actually are used in business that can actually be transferred over to sport. And what I do in the book is I talk a lot about those and how many coaches use these and don't even realize they're doing it. Some effective coaches, but also a variety of other types of strategies that are used out there to allow for coaches to be as effective as possible. But it also allowed me, as I went through there, is to really look at, getting away from the X's and O's, because there's plenty of that stuff out there, but really looking at three major areas. And this kind of follows a lot of the work that Daniel Goleman's done in his book called Focus. He's kind of the emotional intelligence guru. And he talks about focusing on self, focusing on others, and focusing on the wider world. And I began to kind of transfer that over to focusing on leader or coach self-management. How well do coaches, how reflective are coaches? Okay. How well do they understand their strengths? Okay. Their stories, their weaknesses, their blind spots. How well do they do that so that their stories can help them grow and become lifelong learners? And I think that's really important in there. And that's been really exciting to do in working with individual and collective coaches over time. In my master class, which takes this book and works with groups of coaches, is to get them to really look at these areas. I was actually working with a group last month who came in and had signed up for this from a high school in Indiana, and they were really reticent coming in there. And I just kind of told a couple stories similar to the ones I just told you right now, and got them cranking on their stories. And the buzz was amazing. They just started going, and gave them a little criteria there. What's the situation? What's the action? What's the result? What's the insight? And they listened to each other's stories, and they became richer because of that, as a individual and a collective group. So I saw that was really important, of really looking at coaching self-management, then eventually getting into leading and empowering athletes, and then also to, get into looking at systems, choreographing the team dance. What's the system look like? So it gives the coach kind of a three-pronged approach there too.
And I love that, Dr. Yeager. I feel like out in the world, there's so many tools and guides, so to speak, or techniques for the athlete, for the player to improve themselves. And one thing I love that you've done and you've always done, and that you absolutely do in the coaching zone, is that you also have that focus on development of the coach. And that's something that's extremely imperative to having a great team.
Yeah.
So to give
I may say that.
Yes, sir.
I may say this, Pete, that it's really challenging, especially, wherever we are with COVID right now, but especially over the last 24 months or 2 years, where coaches have really had to, look at different pathways to bring out their best in their athletes, where it's been really hard, and it still is hard today for coaches to actually spend the time, a dedicated time, to do this collective self-reflection. That's one of the biggest challenges when I do the master class. It's just that coaches would say, we just can't get the time. We want to do it. We just can't get the time to do it. And I'm saying, I totally understand that, but I also understand how do our coaches grow, and how do they learn, and how do they kind of can learn from each other through this actual reflection process.
Absolutely. Dr. Yeager, this conversation just makes me think of you always have had just a great knack of connecting with not only athletes in the lacrosse realm, but athletes and coaches from all realms of sport. I mean, rugby is very different from lacrosse. Wrestling, while at Culver, you helped the rugby team and wrestling team. And these aren't just athletes in a certain age group. They're from a wide age group. So what I'm curious about, Dr. Yeager, is why do you really have that knack for being able to connect with such a wide range of coaches and athletes? Or how have you developed that knack?
Well, it goes back to that, we first talked about my parents. That started the process off. It didn't happen by accident. But I think over time, I've always learned, no matter who I'm working with, talking with, connecting with, it's just that they deserve the time, Adam Grant, who's he wrote some really great books, Give and Take, and a variety of other books. He's at the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. He talked about social civility, that sometimes people will selective civility, where some people will only be civil to people they care about. And I learned earlier on is to be civil with most people, as many as I can be with. Okay,
I like that philosophy.
It's important, yeah, and and not being selective about it, because that's easy. I think I call that lazy thinking when you don't do that. It allows me to stay on this side of it, and I don't have to take a risk. But I think the thing is to get to know people and to welcome them into a conversation, and it comes from a level of, I think, vulnerability, trust, and developing that, and helping develop that in people. And vulnerability trust is a term that Patrick Lencioni talks about in his leadership circles. It's the predictive trust, he says, is basically, I know your next move. But vulnerability trust is really to be honest and open, so you feel you can have these honest conversations. Just that we have a level of vulnerability trust, Pete. We had some conversations, important conversations years ago.
Okay? Oh, yes, we did.
The nature of sport and the nature of living. Okay. And we trusted each other. So we were allowed to be, we didn't have to fake it to make it. We allowed ourselves to be who we are. And I think that's really important. And I try to do that with everybody I talk with, any kind of new group. When I'm working with a business group, I just finished a gig in Chicago with a group that came from around the country that is really working with engineers and manufacturers, and they're working in the area of and they work with landfills. And the bottom line is that they make these landfills, they work with the gases there to make these things work and sustain. It's really powerful. And I learned about the business, and that helped me learn about them. And they're just as important as an athlete who's 14 years old coming onto the field for the first time. So I look at
Yep.
those things as being very important, having a keen sense of, empathy, understanding their perspectives, like emotional empathy, if it brings out the emotion. And I think empathic concern, which is a third piece in there by Goldman, talks about this. And it's basically empathic concern is, what do you need from me? I'm here for you. Not that in every relationship I connect with somebody that I have an unconditional positive regard, unconditional caring for, but I try to, and I think that's really important. And we don't see that all the time. And it's really challenging. And then being cooped up during COVID really challenged that also, because I was doing that with athletes and teams and other businesses online like this, and I had to do it that way. And but I think those are the things, and I think that's really important, and to get people to, whether they're athletes, whether you're a wrestler, a rugby player, okay, or a lacrosse player, to also have that, getting them to understand that they can have kind of have some self-compassion for themselves. And my hope, through my compassion for them, they can bring that out in themselves and not be so hard on themselves in sport and in other things.
I love it, Dr. Yeager. Really approaching everyone just as a human first and going from there, I feel like is a key piece of that.
Yeah, I was actually speaking with a principal from an a superintendent of a school district today in Indiana about a program. And he says, my job is to make sure the kids are loved and they're safe. And if you met this person, you would know right away you'd want to hang around with him.
Yep.
And I think that's so cool. It's compressed to that's what he wants to do, especially during the last couple of years. Yeah.
Absolutely. That aligns with a big philosophy that I love, which is keep it simple.
Mm-hmm.
Keep it simple.
Yeah.
I feel like nowadays things can sometimes get more complicated than they've ever been.
Sure.
If you're able to boil down what you want to accomplish and what your goal is and what your role is, in simple terms, it can really help give a lot of clarity.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's great advice.
So, Dr. Yeager, next question I've got is, in your opinion, what separates a good coach from a great coach?
Yeah, I think, and then people are going to define great coaches as a lot of different areas. You've heard this before. Was it the wins and losses, or was it, that he made us feel like family there and stuff like that. I think the greatest coaches are those that keep it simple in making a difference in their athletes' lives, and getting them to fish for themselves and getting them to grow. Through the experiences that they have in sports, because as we know, sports really sets you up for some really cool and challenging things. And coaches help athletes navigate through that, getting them the sense of self-worth and helping them to develop their own psychological capital, of hope, confidence, resilience, and optimism, I think do wonders. And then the statistics come when that's done. It shows up there, and it goes back. And that's when you hear these athletes talking about coaches, that they just like, whoa, that's what was it about that person? And they just go back and they remember these little things, that the coach did. And many times it wasn't, that it might have had something to do with an action on the field, or it might have had something to do, totally off the field. But I think that's where things, and I think that's where that, I think really great coaches, love their players, and they try to keep them safe so that they can navigate and play these sports to grow as people.
Absolutely. It makes me think about the great coaches I've had in my life were the ones who I felt first and foremost they cared for me, not as a player, but as a person first, and as a man first, and then the play on the field was second to that. And
Right.
And Coach Knowlton was a big proponent for me in regards to that area. He showed me that he not only cared about me as a player, but cared about me developing as a man. And I feel like if any coach is able to do that, it can really go a long way. And one parallel I'd say it draws to business is when a boss or a manager is able to show their employee that they really care about their development as a person, as a professional,
Right.
and then the results or the sales or the metrics they need to hit come second. That's when great things can occur. And leads me right into my next question, Dr. Yeager, which I have a lot of fellow friends who are great athletes, who are former athletes, collegiate athletes. I played rugby at Baylor. My question is, Dr. Yeager, is one thing that is a tough transition for a lot of people is they've been a great athlete their whole life. They excelled in high school. They excelled in college in their respective sport. And then when they have to make that transition to the real world, sometimes it can be really difficult. Say when they're around that age of 23, 24, 25. On the field, they were extremely successful. They had really mastered their craft. But when they have to go into the real world, they struggle because it's not the same playing field, so to speak. What is some of your advice that maybe someone who's going through that transition?
I think it is challenging, really challenging for a lot of people. And the thing is, I believe it goes back to, I had mentioned just a couple moments ago about self-compassion, is to actually, there's a grieving process that you go through with this, because there's a type of a loss here. There's an opportunity where we had opportunities to play at a high level and brought an incredible amount of joy to you in your life and other people's lives for a number of years. And then you're not able to, you can recall it through memories, but it's really hard to replicate in the day-to-day life, And so I think that's one thing, is to have some self-compassion, understand that really, it's tough. It does feel tough. But then as time goes on, as people find themselves in careers, in the workforce, in different workspaces, they begin to see how the teaming piece connects with what they're doing. I was speaking once with an individual who's he was a principal in a large Boston commercial real estate company, and he would always hire the athletes, especially team sport athletes, and he was doing that because of their capacity to connect the dots and to understand what that was. It was like some of the training was already done.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I know I'm choir here, right? And I think that seeing those skills and how those skills work, some of those skills with teaming and just how you're communicating, and even though your metrics are different, okay,
Yep.
but you're still doing things that allow that connection. I know, now. I mean, I think maybe I have one save left in me, but I'm probably not going to get back in the goal ever again. And but I kind of vicariously lived through seeing other coaches, and do their thing and working with them, having the conversation with you tonight. That's very valuable for me. And it allows people, when they can start slowly making that transition, it allows for them to see the value in that. And then also to celebrate what they've done in the past. And what's really amazing is the power of those connections that many of those athletes had earlier on, when they kind of connect with each other through reunions. It is like, let's say it's interesting. Okay.
It definitely is.
But it brings less of what was the score of the game back to how do we care for each other, and in many ways love each other as being members of this team for this certain period of time in our lives. And I think that's really, really powerful. And I think by athletes doing that, former athletes doing that, allowing for those cool things to come out in their transitions and work over time, can actually bring out the best in them. But you just can't dismiss. You can't dismiss. You're no longer doing this.
Right.
It's like, I think in our sports psych class, we read an article once, and it was about a person says, "I'm not this person anymore."
Yep.
And you're always that person.
I remember.
You're always.
I think I remember that article.
Yeah. Exactly. You're always that person.
Yep.
Okay. Or a fan says, "Well, you're not him anymore." And I go, "Whoa, maybe I can't dribble the ball and take the shot like I used to, but I'm still this person." And I think that's really powerful, and that legacy can live with us, of what we did. And I've told that story many times about the Boston State lacrosse, and I probably told it. You heard it when I spoke with you, the wrestling team.
I love it every time.
Yeah, but it never gets old because it was so formative for me. But it's really helped me in everything else I've done in my work life and stuff like that. To understand that and the importance behind that, and the connection, and the collective, the power of that, really, really important.
I couldn't agree more, Dr. Yeager. And for example, my transition from being a rugby player to being a professional was difficult, like a lot of others.
Right.
A lot of others have it, and I went from being the captain of the Baylor rugby team. We had just won the Red River Championship for the first time in our school's history. And I was on cloud nine rugby wise, and then had to make the transition to, I initially worked as a salesman for Cadillac, and it was a whole different playing field. And the transition was tough, but when I was able to understand that there was a lot of good that I need to keep with me from that experience, maybe I'm not doing that right now, but a lot of the lessons and the accountability and the teamwork and just the camaraderie is something that could be valuable for me in the workplace. And eventually it began to translate. So I think it's
Exactly.
It's a valuable lesson that everyone should be able to hold on to that part of their life, but you do have to approach it as, okay, that's a part of me that's gone now. It's still there.
But it's different.
It's still there, but it's different. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. And you say the term eventually is an operational term there, because it's something that you can't turn the switch off and on. And it's something that we go through, and it's part of the life experience, and then, that of doing that, is, Coach K's finish up his coaching career sometime either Saturday night or Monday night. And, you talk about whether people care for him or not. The bottom line, he's been doing this. He's been coaching since, I think, I'm not sure, since 1980, at Duke, and had another 10 years of coaching before that. The importance is that he really relishes the experiences of everything that happens there. So he has just an incredible, will there be an adjustment for him? I don't know, and there probably will be, when he doesn't come out to Cameron Indoor Stadium as the head coach next year, but as maybe a mentor, and he's still going to be working for Duke as a spokesperson for Duke in the athletic department. And I think this is really an important part of that, our capacity to allow ourselves to feel what that's like to go through that transition. And there's a certain degree, and I don't like to use the term suffering, because suffering can be really used for something really even dire, but there is a feeling and a suffering that it is like, I don't have this anymore and I wanted it. And it's psychically painful for me. And,
it absolutely is.
And I wish I had that there, it goes with the same thing with a person who has a career-ending injury. There is a psychic painfulness of that, but also that there's meaningful and significant things that can happen because of going through that. Not just because you played, it's because you've got to go through that. And agree more. Yeah. So, I think that's important. Now, somebody might argue, well, I was fine. I didn't have to go through anything. Well, that's great. Okay. But many people do. And when you do that, there's that piece that's really important. And hopefully other people who care about other people pick up on that and allow for them to share that and to commiserate over that. Yeah.
And now a word from our sponsors.
It's your man, Peter Hamm, checking on in here. And today, ladies and gents, I'm going to give 3 simple things that anyone can do that helps the show tremendously. Number 1, ladies and gents. Number 1 is to simply invite your Facebook friends to like the page. All you got to do is go to Facebook, type in Hamm Planet Podcast. It'll take you to our page. You will then see a section that says invite friends. You click select all. It sends your friends a little notification. It's not too overbearing, and it invites them to like the page. This is tremendously valuable. That's number 1. Number 2, ladies and gents, is to provide a good old 5-star review on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and or Facebook. 3, y'all, is engage. Simply feel free to share anything. Feel free to comment on anything. Say whatever you want. You can engage on our page via Facebook. You can engage on our Instagram. We've got Hamm Planet, and we also have @Hamm Planet Clips. And we're on TikTok. I gave in. All the kids are doing it, so now we're doing it. TikTok @Hamm Planet Clips, and of course, YouTube, Hamm Planet Podcast Clips. So, ladies and gents, that's going to wrap up the video for today. These are 3 simple actions that you can do that will help the Hamm Planet Podcast tremendously. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to that good old Hamm Planet Podcast. We're happy to see you. We've got the one and only John Yeager in the building, the author of The Coaching Zone. Dr. Yeager, what inspired you to write this book?
Well, basically lots of, my experiences, I think, in sport and the people that I got to know, my own coaches, fellow coaches, and really kind of through those stories that kind of for over 45 years or so, that really kind of resonated with me when I played sports and coached, and then really thought it was just really time to put something together that really, I think could have a different angle of vision on how coaches kind of looked at being lifelong learners in the sport.
Absolutely. And in regards to the book, Dr. Yeager, is there anything that's come from it that you didn't necessarily expect to happen after you published it?
I think in some ways I've had a wonderful opportunity to connect with a lot of people that I never would have had to, chance to connect with through doing these master classes. And also got a chance to sit down with a lot of coaches that I kind of knew, but not that well, and to get to know them a lot better. And that's been exciting, kind of barnstorming around the country and doing this, that's been wonderful. And I think in some ways this is what I did was not I wasn't reinventing the wheel. I was just taking things that are really commonsensical, okay, but really taking it to another level so that people can be explicit and serious about their approaches to their applying their craft on the field and off the field.
Absolutely. Dr. Yeager, my next question is, so as a longtime teacher and coach to many athletes, what, in your words, taking a step back away from the playing field and focusing a little bit on the teaching side, what, in your words, is the most important aspect to take away from schooling? For example, I went to Culver for 4 years. I learned a lot of pre-calculus, and I learned a lot of Latin, and I learned a lot of many things, humanities. But within that, there was a lot of lessons that I really took away that have stuck with me for life: accountability, responsibility, showing up on time, making eye contact. The list goes on and on. But I'd love to hear from a teacher's perspective. What's the most important part of schooling?
I think it's growth. I think it's growth. It's for you at Culver and for other people in high school, for students in high school, student athletes in high school, it's a developmentally important time of one's life, in who you are around, in what you do, and or what you don't do. It makes a difference, and I think as an educator for many years, I saw that that looking at where people were, not that students came into my classes as blank slates, not at all, but having the opportunity to connect with them so that they could learn and make some changes, to fish on their own, to grow and to connect with each other. I think for a while I was a sage on the stage of kind of getting up there and with oratory, and as you said, I'm animated and do things like that. Yeah, but I think also what was really important was the connection that the students are having with each other, and how they learn from each other also. And how they take that, whatever the material is, whether you're in the classroom or if you're in the dorm or the barracks or on the athletic field. I think that's really, really important. So, my metric is saying, okay, this is where you were day one of class. Okay, this is our last class. So where are you? And hopefully the student was saying, I'm still in progress. Okay. Still under construction, but I think that was the important thing there. You mentioned about the term showing up. I've got this wristlet right here, and it says right here, it says show up, right? And this is from Keith Bugby, who was the best man in my wedding. Keith's daughter died in childbirth when she was having her third child. I'm not sure how many years ago it was, not that long ago. And he had been the coach over 30, I think he's 37 years as the head coach of Springfield College men's lacrosse team. And when he came back, to the team, he went to them and he says, look, I know, lots of stuff's happened. Stuff happens. Okay. And some stuff is not very good at all. But I'm going to dedicate to every day, show up, be right there all the time. And I wear this every day now in honor of him and honor of his daughter. But it goes to the idea of showing up, showing up, being there. Even if you don't feel like being there, you are there, because then you make a difference in other people's lives in the world. And I think that's critically important, So
absolutely.
And so I think that as an educator, I think educators want to see the metrics, want to see the needle moved over time.
Oh yeah.
And as that needle's being moved, it's the kind of, it's the academic, it's the emotional, mental, social, physical, spiritual piece too, and moral piece,
Absolutely. It's a common phrase that showing up is just half the battle, 50% of the battle. I feel like a lot of people may sometimes look at that phrase and be like, oh, it's just a cliche phrase. But that story right there just goes to show that, showing up really is such an impactful thing. And one way I like to think about it is, I'm human. I have trouble showing up to all types of things, more things than I'd like to admit. But a big part of being an adult, being a leader, being a father, being a coach is understanding not just the impact it'll have on you of just showing up, but the impact you'll have on everyone around you, everyone who's associated with what's going on. And that's, in my life personally, Dr. Yeager, that's something that I've continually began to grasp over the years, is that the showing up and your actions, they go far beyond just how they affect you. And having that broad overview of the impact your actions and presence can have is a really powerful thing, and it can make you do things that maybe you've never even done before.
Exactly. It takes selfishness out of it. It's that you are making a difference in other people's lives by being in that airspace.
No doubt about it. Dr. Yeager, speaking of selflessness, you were nearly teaching for 2 decades at Culver, committed your life, big chunk of your life, to teaching, educating others. And of course, Culver is very special to me. So if you could, Dr. Yeager, just reflect on what Culver was to you, why it was special to you. I'd love to hear it.
Well, I came, my family, my wife Laura and my daughter Megan was 3 years old when we came to Culver in 2000. And we had moved from Boston. Our families were from both my wife's family and my family are from New England area. And it was a huge move for us. We had followed John Buxton out there, who had been the head of school there for just a year or two, because I really liked his leadership style. But it was a big move for us. And first year and a half was a little rocky. And it was a little rocky just because it was just an adjustment of being in a different place and doing some things a little bit differently. But over the years, what really struck me was the mission of the school and the commitment that people who really bled school, breathed it day in and day out, really showed up every day.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and in school, you have to, as an adult, you need to show up every day. Okay.
You absolutely do.
And then and then people had to get the job done, which is that other phrase that we hear all the time: do your job. And I think it was through working with other people who did their job, I did my job, and collectively we made the place a better place for our students to grow and develop. I think was really, really important. You know, that's really kind of had resonated with me. You know, I was just really blessed to become a professor emeritus when I left there, and so I've got this little plaque or a little certificate in my office, and I just look back and I go, wow, I was there for 19 years. And it's right around the corner because my wife Laura still works at Culver, but it's still Culver,
Right.
you know. And I've gone back out to help with our prep lacrosse team, which is much stronger than the teams that I coached earlier on in the 2000s.
Oh, wow.
But
That's saying a lot. That's saying a lot. I mean, Culver lacrosse, hard to level up from already being one of the best teams in the nation.
Yeah, but they respect the legacy of the teams that came before them, which is really important. With John Bersner, who's the coach there now, has really helped to get them to understand that, you know, that this program grew and developed over time. And they are just, you know, when alums come back, they are, it is a really wonderful experience to come back and, you know, when they meet with the players like that, you know, and I think that's an important thing. And so, I think that's something that the Culver does, you know. I mean, it's just, and I think, you know, at the end of every year when there's graduation, and I know you've told a lot of people about this, Pete, because if you've never been to Culver and haven't gone to Culver, it's hard to get Culver.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and that graduation weekend is just an amazing event. And it's just not just, you know, it's not just pomp and circumstance when we're, you know, it's an amazing thing. And for me, the most exciting part always was baccalaureate. And baccalaureate was when all the seniors met in the chapel before, and they sang the Culver song, and a
lot of tears shed that day.
Oh ye men of Culver, for the CMA cadets.
Great song.
And that just always got me going. And there was always a cadet who would sing that song. He would do a solo, and that for me every year was the finalization, or also kind of the year was coming to the end.
Yep.
And to know and to feel, I'm getting goosebumps thinking about this, saying this. That was it right there, you know, when that happened, you know. Yep. And then suddenly everybody's gone. Within 5 hours, 4 hours, the campus is empty. It reminds me, and I mentioned this in the book, my friend Kevin Hicks, who's the president of the Stevenson School out in Pebble Beach, California. And he talks about this in sports, but, you know, he says right now the fields are empty, and the campus is empty after the Oval there, you know, and everybody's gone home. Everybody's packed their bags, and people have gone to their post-graduate graduation parties, or gone straight to the airport, or drove home. But the thing is that the people make up Culver.
They do.
But there's a pull there's a pull and a magnetism that brings people to this place. And when people ask me about it still, I speak so fondly of it. When I go down to the fitness center, or if I'm helping out with the Culver prep team, or just taking a walk around campus, it just is something really, really special. And like I've never left. And I think as graduates, when you folks come back for reunions, that it's like you never left.
It really is. And that final ceremony that you're speaking of, distinctly remember giving you a big bear hug, Dr. Yeager. I think I've got some pictures, maybe shedding a few tears, hugging.
Exactly. Yeah.
All the great professors and coaches. And it's hard to explain Culver.
It really is.
I think that's a commonality among all alumni. If they try to explain it to someone else, it's just Culver.
Yeah, it is.
So, Dr. Yeager, going back to your book, in regards to the book, what has made it special to you?
I think taking the time to spending the time researching it and interviewing everybody, and then getting it down on paper. It was a 5-year process. And my editor, the person who edited the book, didn't know much about sports, but she was able to take and make it really clear to anybody that read it that they would understand it.
The clarity and the personableness of the entire book, it flows so smoothly.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, Catherine Britton did a great job with that, there too. And I think it was kind of living the dream of working on it and really putting it was funny that I had worked on it a lot, and I just needed probably another good year working on it.
Yep.
To kind of get it done. And my motivation was a little bit off, but what happened is I ran into Brooke Wheeler, and she was the class of 2003. She was a senior prefect, and she was she was a hockey goalie, played a hockey goalie in college, and she now has her own business. And she actually was speaking at Culver, came in February. This is right before COVID hit, I think. And January, February, and a couple of years ago. And she, so my wife and I took her out to the Lake House Grill for dinner, and we got talking. And she has a great book out called One Trusted Adult, which is wonderful, and coaches could learn a lot from reading that book. And that just gave me the impetus saying, hey, I'm gonna go after this now. And so it was good. Then I had her do put a testimonial recommendation in the book for me, and which was great, but was another Culver connection, which was important, within that to help take it to that point,
No doubt about it. So one thing I love that you mentioned is that you needed that one last push to really focus in on it, dial in on it to get it done. And that makes me think of a concept I like to gravitate towards, which is having singularity of focus in life. And having that singularity of focus is what really helps people accomplish great things. So what I'm curious about, Dr. Yeager, is, in your opinion, do you believe having singularity of focus, a single goal in mind, for example, completing the book or winning a championship or wanting to get to this level in your line of work, is having that singularity of focus essential to accomplishing greatness?
Some people would disagree. I tend to think, though, for me, at least, having a singular focus, okay, even though there's other focuses that we need to have in our lives in other areas, we don't let everything just go by the wayside. But to be present with the task is critically important. The same thing is being present with a task and singularity of focus when you're on the athletic field. If you're not, then that drunken monkey's acting away, and you're going to make mistakes. So I think that's critically important. Are people able to take different focuses and compartmentalize at different times and do things? Oh yeah, really, really good at that. People are good at that. I think just having that focus there and keeping that present moment, that level of mindfulness. And when your mind begins to wander, to notice it, be curious about it, and say, what's the task I need to be doing right now? Okay, I need to get back to that. Something when I talk doing mental prep with athletes, I talk to them about that. Who their mind wanders because they're coming off their game. And I say, okay, be curious about it, tolerate it, and don't say, oh, that's not good. No, just say, hey, I'm having those thoughts. And so what do you need to go back to do right now? I got to go back to doing this, or that. And I think that's critically important.
Absolutely. Asking that question.
Simplicity. Yeah.
Simplicity, and always trying to be aware of, okay, what matters most right now is imperative. It's something I struggle with every day. But being able to have that awareness is so key. Dr. Yeager, so my next question is, I love you. I'm a little biased. I think the coaching zone is for anyone and everyone. But in your words, Dr. Yeager, who is the coaching zone for? Who's the perfect reader?
The perfect reader is for a coach who, youth, high school, college, and a youth coach who's really serious about looking to expand the social emotional aspects of that, along with college coaches and high school coaches who are lifelong learners, okay? Who are constantly wanting to learn to kind of get a different spin, not a different spin, but a different angle of vision on how they can be even more effective and enjoy the process even more as they go out there. And that's, basically looking at those three main parts of the book, coaching, self-management, leading and empowering others, and actually choreographing the team dance and getting some other types of strategies in there that are typically do not come in coaching books.
I love it. Dr. Yeager, I have my final questions for you. And it is one that I always love to hear the response to, which is, if you could go back to 25-year-old John Yeager, don't know if you were a hippie at 25, but
I went out of it a little. Yeah, I think yeah.
If you could go back to 25-year-old John Yeager and give him some life advice, what would that life advice be and why?
That's a great question. As I mull over that, I think, Pete, it's no matter what you do good. Do good. So
I love
do
that.
what you do well. Do unto others. That gets back to that sort of civility piece. And do good, and to know that, to always have that as a mantra. So not getting caught up in selfishness or selfish stuff, but coming back and making sure that you're in present moment with doing good.
I love that.
That's my answer, and I'm sticking to it.
I love it. I couldn't agree more. I like to say I've got a philosophy that's very similar to that, which is just be a good man and everything else falls into line.
Sure.
Well, Dr. Yeager, had such a great time tonight. Always a pleasure and honor catching up with you. And where can our listeners connect with you, learn more about the book, learn more about the masterclass? What's the best place for them to go?
Well, the book's on Amazon, Kindle and paperback. The website is thecoachingzonebook.com, thecoachingzonebook.com. And then, I'm at john@yeagerleadership.com, john@yeagerleadership.com. But also you can look me up on LinkedIn or Facebook. Typically there. I'm on Twitter and Instagram, but more so on Facebook and LinkedIn. And also there's the Coaching Zone pages on all those sites too. So love to hear from you.
Love it. Y'all definitely make sure to get yourself a copy of the Coaching Zone. Next Level Leadership in Sports. Dr. Yeager is filled with knowledge. And as y'all heard, this is 5 years of blood, sweat, and tears, and a lot of interviews and a lot of value packed into one book. So couldn't recommend it enough. Dr. Yeager, it's been a great evening and looking forward to continuing to stay in touch. And ladies and gentlemen, as we always say, if you enjoyed tonight's episode, make sure to share it with your mom, dad, brother, sister, uncle, cousin, best friend, even with Rick down the street. Because as we always say, you can never overdose on the good vibes, ladies and gents. With that being said, we will see your beautiful faces soon.